The great chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with the voices of 47 different species. Ambassador Jake Morrison sat in the human section, watching as delegates from across the galaxy took their seats. The massive station called Nexus Prime floated in deep space, far from any star system. It had been humanity's political home for 30 years. Jake looked at his two companions. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Carter sat to his right, her military uniform crisp and clean. She had served as his tactical advisor for 5 years. On his left sat Dr. Ben Walsh, a thin man with gray hair who knew more about alien biology than anyone else on Earth. Both looked nervous. The Zephyrian Chancellor called the session to order. His blue skin gleamed under the bright lights as he spoke through his translator device. Today's main business was Resolution 2847. Jake had read it 3 times, and each reading made him angrier. The resolution wanted to classify humans as a developing species. It would limit human expansion to just their current 12 colony worlds. Worse, it proposed that the Altarian Empire should oversee human cultural development. The Altarians considered themselves the most civilized race in the galaxy. High Counselor Vex Thara of the Altarian Empire stood to present the resolution. Her tall, pale form moved gracefully to the speaking platform. When she spoke, her voice carried the tone of someone talking to children. "Fellow council members," she began, "we must address the human problem. Their recent conflicts on frontier worlds show they are not ready for full galactic citizenship. They fight among themselves. They expand too quickly. They do not respect the established order." Jake felt his hands clench into fists. Lisa placed a warning hand on his arm. She knew his temper. Vex Thara continued, "The Altarian Empire offers to guide humanity toward proper civilization. We have successfully guided 12 other species in the past. Under our care, humans can learn to be productive members of galactic society." Other delegates nodded. The Rigelian representative looked uncomfortable, but most seemed to agree with the Altarian proposal. Jake could not believe what he was hearing. When his turn came to speak, Jake stood slowly. The chamber grew quiet. Everyone knew this moment would be important. "Honored delegates," Jake began, his voice steady and clear. "I want to remind you of some facts. 30 years ago, human engineers saved the Kepler Mining Consortium when their automated systems failed. Without our help, they would have lost everything." He paused, looking around the chamber. 5 years ago, human doctors found the cure. For the Rigelian plague, we saved millions of lives. We asked for nothing in return. The Rigelian delegate shifted in his seat. Jake could see guilt in his large, dark eyes. 2 years ago, human diplomats ended the Proxima trade wars. The fighting had gone on for decades. We brought peace in 6 months. Jake's voice grew stronger. We have proven ourselves again and again. We have been loyal allies. We have shared our knowledge freely. We have never broken a treaty or agreement. Vex Thara interrupted him. "Ambassador Morrison, past actions do not excuse current behavior. Your species shows clear signs of primitive thinking. Your frontier conflicts prove you cannot control your violent nature." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "You speak of our frontier conflicts. Do you know what really happened out there? Pirates attacked our colonies. We defended ourselves. When we asked the Council for help, you told us to handle it ourselves. Now you blame us for fighting back." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some delegates supported Jake's words. Others sided with the Altarians. The Chancellor called for order. When quiet returned, Jake continued speaking. "You call us primitive, but we have contributed more to galactic society in 30 years than some species have in 300. You want to limit our expansion because you fear our success." Vex Thara's pale face flushed with anger. Your arrogance proves our point, Ambassador. You need guidance to overcome these aggressive tendencies. The preliminary vote was called. Jake watched as the results appeared on the main screen. 31 species voted in favor of the resolution. Only 12 supported humanity. 4 abstained. Jake stared at the numbers. Species that humanity had helped were voting against them. The Vegan Agricultural Collective, whose farms used human irrigation technology, voted yes. The Centauri Federation, who had signed multiple trade agreements with human colonies, voted yes. Even the Tau Ceti Republic, whose shipping lanes were protected by human patrol ships, voted yes. The betrayal cut deep. These were supposed to be their friends and allies. The Chancellor announced a formal recess. Jake needed to speak with Earth before the final vote. He walked to the human communication chamber with Lisa and Ben following behind him. The quantum communication link connected him directly to the White House. President Helen Brooks appeared on the screen, her face serious and tired. It was late night in Washington. Mr. President, Jake began, the preliminary vote failed. They want to classify us as a developing species. President Brooks listened as Jake explained the resolution and the vote results. Her face grew darker. With each word, "What are your recommendations, Ambassador?" she asked. Jake took a deep breath. "I think we should leave, Madam President. This council no longer represents our interests. They see us as children who need supervision. The economic consequences could be severe," Brooks warned. "The consequences of staying could be worse," Jake replied. "If we accept this resolution, we become second-class citizens forever. They will control our expansion, our trade, our future." Lisa stepped forward. "Madam President, our military analysis shows we can defend our territory without council support. Our colonies are strong enough to survive independently." President Brooks was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. "Ambassador Morrison, I am giving you full authority to respond as you see fit. Earth stands behind whatever decision you make." The communication ended. Jake looked at his two companions. "Are you ready to make history?" They returned to the council chamber as the session resumed. The final vote would happen within the hour. Jake requested permission to address the council one final time. Standing at the speaking platform, Jake looked out at the assembled delegates. His voice carried clearly through the chamber. "Honored delegates, I have consulted with my government. We have reached a decision regarding Resolution 2847. The chamber fell completely silent. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. All treaties, agreements, and partnerships established through this council are now void. We will no longer participate in this body." Chaos erupted. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some banged on their desks. Others stood and pointed at Jake. The Chancellor called repeatedly for order. Jake continued speaking over the noise. "We came to this council as partners and equals. You have chosen to treat us as children. We will not accept that role." He removed his translation device and placed it on the speaking platform. Lisa and Ben did the same with theirs. The three humans walked toward the exit. "You cannot simply leave," Vexthar shouted behind them. "The council has jurisdiction over all civilized species." Jake turned back one final time. Without his translator, he spoke in clear English, knowing the chamber systems would broadcast his words. "We are no longer your concern." The three humans left the chamber, leaving behind 30 years of galactic politics. Behind them, the greatest political crisis in galactic history had just begun. News of humanity's withdrawal spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the same shocking story. Humans had walked out of the Galactic Council. After 30 years of membership, they were gone. On Earth, President Helen Brooks called an emergency press conference. The White House press room was packed with reporters from around the world. She walked to the podium with Secretary of Defense Greg Martinez and Secretary of State Patricia Lewis beside her. "My fellow humans," she began, "today marks a new chapter in our history. We have formally withdrawn from the Galactic Council. We will no longer accept being treated as second-class citizens in our own galaxy." A reporter raised her hand. "Madam President, what about our trade agreements? Our colonies depend on galactic commerce." President Brooks looked directly into the camera. "Effective immediately, we are forming the Independent Human Alliance. Earth and all 12 colony worlds will stand together. We will forge our own path among the stars." Greg Martinez stepped forward. "Our military is prepared to defend all human territory. Any attempt to force compliance with Resolution 2847 will be met with resistance." Patricia Lewis added, "We are already in contact with several species who oppose the resolution. Humanity is not alone in this decision." On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Chancellor Morvik of the Centauri Federation paced back and forth. He had abstained from the vote, and now he wished he had supported humanity. "We need to fix this," he said to his aide. "Without human support, half our trade routes will collapse." High Counselor Vic Thara sat in her private office, watching the news broadcasts. She smiled coldly at the reports of human defiance. In her mind, this proved her point about human arrogance. She activated her communication device and contacted her home world. "Admiral Orcs," she said when the military commander appeared on screen, "begin preparations to secure the human colonies. They will surrender once they realize their position." Admiral Orcs looked uncertain. "High Counselor, our intelligence reports suggest the human colonies are better defended than we thought." "Nonsense," Vexthara replied. "They are farmers and miners. A show of force will bring them to their senses." Meanwhile, Ambassador Jake Morrison was already aboard the human vessel UHS Defiance. Captain Ryan Hughes had been waiting in orbit around Nexus Prime, ready for a quick departure. The ship's crew worked efficiently as they prepared to leave Council space. "Captain," Jake said, "set course for New Dakota. I want to check on our colonies before we return to Earth." "Yes, sir," Hughes replied. "We should reach New Dakota in 18 hours. In the ship's communication room, Lisa Carter was busy sending encrypted messages to all human military units. The withdrawal plan had been prepared months ago, just in case. Every human ship, base, and outpost received the same order: return to human space immediately. Dr. Ben Walsh sat in his quarters, reviewing files on his tablet. As the Council's former xenobiologist, he knew which species might support humanity. He was already planning to contact Dr. Kethner of Rigel. The Rigelian doctor had looked ashamed during the vote. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Amy Foster was loading cargo on her freighter, Stormwind, at Haven's port. The neutral trading station buzzed with activity as usual. Then her communication officer brought her the news. "Captain, we just received an emergency broadcast from Earth. All human vessels are ordered to return to human space immediately." Amy felt her stomach drop. She had been trading with alien merchants for 15 years. Many of them were her friends. A vegan trader named Zektal approached her loading dock. His green skin looked pale with worry. "Amy, is it true? Are you leaving?" She nodded sadly. "Orders from Earth. I have to go." Zektal's large eyes filled with concern. "What about our contract?" "I need those medical supplies for my colony." Amy looked at her old friend. "I'm sorry, Zek. I don't have a choice." She finished loading quickly and prepared her ship for departure. As the Stormwind left Haven's port, dozens of alien traders watched from the station windows. Many of them depended on human goods and services. New Dakota, Governor Pete Collins was holding an emergency meeting with his colonial council. The planet was humanity's largest agricultural colony, with over 3 million residents. Most of them were farmers who had never expected to see war. "The Altarians are coming," Collins announced. "Our sources say they plan to occupy all human colonies." Kate Bishop, the colony's security chief, stood up. She was a former Navy SEAL who had retired to New Dakota 5 years ago. "Governor, how many ships are they sending?" "Intelligence suggests a full battle group. Maybe 20 ships." Kate smiled grimly. "Then we better get ready." "How many militia members do we have?" "About 50,000 with military training," Collins replied. "But they're mostly farmers now." "Farmers who know every inch of this planet," Kate said. "And farmers who know how to modify equipment." "Governor, I suggest we implement Operation Homestead." Operation Homestead was New Dakota's secret defense plan. The colony's agricultural equipment could be converted into weapons. Grain silos could become fortified bunkers. Irrigation tunnels could hide troops and supplies. On Rigel Prime, Dr. Kethmer was having his own crisis. As the chief medical officer of the Rigelian Healers Guild, he had influence over his species' politics. The vote had been wrong, and he knew it. "We must protest this decision," he told his council. "Humans saved millions of our people during the plague. How can we vote against them now?" Elder Morthick, the guild leader, shook his aged head. "The political situation is complicated, Kethmer. We cannot risk our relationship with the Altarians." "What relationship?" Kethmer demanded. "They treat us like servants." "Humans treat us like equals." Back on Earth, reports were coming in from across human space. The economic impact was already beginning. The Kepler Mining Consortium stock had crashed when investors realized their operations depended on human engineers. Without human technical support, their automated mining systems were failing. Admiral Chris Stone, the newly appointed commander of the Human Defense Fleet, was studying tactical reports in his Pentagon office. Human military doctrine had always assumed they would fight alongside Council forces. Now they were on their own. "Admiral," his aide said, "we're getting reports from our border stations. Several alien fleets are moving toward human space." Stone studied the tactical display. "How long before they reach our colonies?" "The Altarian fleet will reach New Dakota in 6 days. Other fleets are heading for New Virginia and Phoenix Colony." Stone picked up his secure phone and called President Brooks. "Madam President, it's starting. The Altarians are moving against our colonies." "Are we ready?" she asked. "We're about to find out," Stone replied. On Titan Station, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was packing her research files. As the galaxy's leading expert on terraforming technology, her work was valuable to many species. The station administrator had given all human researchers 24 hours to leave. "Doctor," her vegan assistant said, "what will happen to the terraforming project on Kepler-7? Elena looked at the young alien sadly. "Without human expertise, it will probably fail. I'm sorry." She encrypted her most important research and transferred it to human databases. The knowledge would be safe, but the galaxy would lose access to decades of scientific progress. As Elena's transport ship left Titan Station, she watched through the viewport as other human vessels departed from stations across Council space. Thousands of human citizens were returning home, taking their skills and knowledge with them. The Galactic Council had expected humanity to beg for readmission. Instead, they were discovering how much they had depended on human contributions. Trade routes established through human diplomacy were falling apart. Mining operations designed by human engineers were shutting down. Medical facilities using human technology were running out of spare parts. Chancellor Morvik called another emergency session, but only half the delegates attended. Several species were having their own political crisis as they realized the economic cost of losing human partnership. High Counselor Vexthara remained confident. She believed military force would bring the humans back. But reports from her own intelligence services were troubling. Human colonies were not surrendering. Instead, they were preparing for war. On New Dakota, Governor Collins stood on his office balcony, looking out at the vast farmlands that covered his world. In the distance, he could see farmers converting their tractors into mobile weapon platforms. Kate Bishop's defensive plan was working. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity would not go quietly into political exile. They had built something worth fighting for, and they intended to keep it. The real war was just beginning. 3 weeks after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy was falling apart. The economic crisis was worse than anyone had expected. The political situation was even worse. On Rigel Prime, Dr. Kethmer was leading a revolution within his own government. The Rigelian Healers Guild had finally voted to protest the Council's treatment of humanity. Standing before the Rigelian Parliament, Kethmer spoke with passion that surprised even himself. "We have made a terrible mistake," he declared. "Humans saved our species from extinction, and we repaid them with betrayal. I propose that Rigel formally withdraw medical support from all Council operations until Resolution 2847 is reversed." Parliament erupted in debate. Elder Morthic stood to oppose him. "Dr. Kethmer, such action would damage our standing with the Altarians." "Our standing with the Altarians is worthless," Kethmer replied. "They see us as servants, not allies. Humans treated us as equals." The vote was close, but Kethmer won. Rigel would withdraw medical support from the Council. It was the first crack in the alliance against humanity. Meanwhile, the Kepler Mining Consortium was dying. Without human engineers, their automated systems continued to fail. Entire mining operations had shut down across 12 star systems. The rare minerals needed for faster-than-light drives were becoming scarce. Consortium Director Velanash called an emergency meeting on the mining station. Deep Core. Representatives from major galactic corporations attended via hologram. The news was bad. "We have lost 60% of our production capacity," Velanash announced. "Without human technical support, we cannot maintain our equipment. Our stock value has dropped by 80%. A Centauri representative spoke up. "Can we hire human engineers as independent contractors?" "The humans are not responding to our offers," Velanash replied sadly. "They have cut all business ties with Council-affiliated companies." On New Dakota, Governor Pete Collins was watching the Altarian fleet approach his world. 23 warships had dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of his star system. They would reach his planet in 6 hours. Kate Bishop stood beside him in the command center they had built beneath the capital city. "Governor, all defensive positions are ready. Every farmer on this planet knows their role." Collins nodded. "How many people do we have in the tunnels?" 2 million civilians are in the underground shelters. 1 million militia members are at their positions. The Altarian fleet was led by Captain Sandra Hayes aboard the ship, Dominion's Pride. She had expected to find a defenseless farming world. Instead, her sensors were picking up defensive positions across the planet's surface. "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "we're detecting weapons emplacements around every major city. The humans have turned their farming equipment into artillery." Hayes frowned. "How effective could farming equipment be against warships?" "Unknown, Captain, but there are thousands of these positions." Hayes opened a communication channel to the planet. Governor Collins appeared on her screen, sitting calmly in what looked like a farm building. "Governor Collins, I am Captain Hayes of the Altarian Navy. By order of the Galactic Council, this world is now under Altarian protection. Prepare for occupation." Collins smiled. "Captain Hayes, This world is under human protection. I suggest you return to Altarian space. Governor, you have 6 hours to surrender. If you resist, we will be forced to use military action. Captain, Collins replied, we have been preparing for this moment for 3 weeks. We are ready. The communication ended. Hayes stared at the screen in confusion. These were supposed to be simple farmers, not soldiers. As the Altarian fleet moved closer to New Dakota, problems were spreading across the galaxy. The Proxima Trade Consortium had collapsed completely. Without human diplomatic mediation, the member species had returned to old conflicts and grudges. On the trading world of Commerce Prime, riots were breaking out as supply lines failed. The planet depended on goods from across the galaxy, but trade routes were falling apart without human shipping companies to maintain them. Chancellor Morvik was desperately trying to hold the council together. In 3 weeks, attendance at council sessions had dropped from 47 species to 18. Several major powers had announced they were reconsidering their membership. We must find a solution, he told his remaining allies. The economic damage is spreading to every corner of the galaxy. High Counselor Vexthara disagreed. The solution is simple. Once we occupy the human colonies, they will have no choice but to return to the council under our terms. What if the occupation fails? Asked the Tau Ceti representative. Vexthara laughed coldly. How can farmers resist trained soldiers? She was about to get her answer. On New Dakota, the Altarian fleet had reached orbit. Captain Hayes began landing. Troops in the planet's capital city. 2,000 Altarian soldiers deployed from transport ships, expecting quick victory. Instead, they found a city that looked normal but felt wrong. The streets were empty. Every building seemed abandoned. Then the first explosion came. Kate Bishop had planned the defense carefully. The city's underground tunnel system connected every major building. Human defenders could move unseen while Altarian troops were exposed on the surface. Contact. An Altarian squad leader reported, "We're taking fire from multiple directions. The humans are using the buildings as cover." More explosions rocked the landing zone. The humans had converted construction equipment into improvised artillery. Bulldozers armored with steel plates fired mining charges at Altarian positions. Captain Hayes watched from orbit as her ground forces struggled against an enemy they could barely see. Major Torres, what is your situation? Captain, the humans have turned the entire city into a fortress. Every building is a weapon position. We cannot advance without heavy casualties. Hayes was shocked. Her military training had never prepared her for this kind of warfare. Then her ship's alarms began sounding. Captain, her engineering officer reported, life support systems are failing. We have lost environmental controls on decks 7 through 12. How is that possible? The systems were manufactured using human components, without maintenance. Parts, they are breaking down. Hayes realized she was trapped. Her ground forces were pinned down by farmers with improvised weapons. Her ships were falling apart without human-made spare parts. The occupation was turning into a disaster. On Earth, Admiral Chris Stone was monitoring the battle from his command center. Real-time reports from New Dakota showed the Altarian forces in retreat. Admiral, his aide reported, the Altarians are requesting permission to withdraw from New Dakota. Stone smiled. Permission denied. They started this fight. The news of the failed invasion spread quickly. The mighty Altarian navy had been defeated by farmers. Other species began to question Altarian strength and competence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now working on Mars, received a secret message from Dr. Kethmer. The Rigelian wanted to share research data outside official council channels. She was not the only human scientist receiving such offers. Dr. Rodriguez, the message read, the Rigelian Healers Guild formally requests scientific cooperation with human researchers. We believe Knowledge should not be limited by politics. Elena smiled as she prepared her response. The galaxies. Scientists were choosing sides, and many were choosing humanity. Meanwhile, the economic crisis deepened. The Vegan Agricultural Collective announced they could no longer maintain their farming systems without human irrigation technology. Food shortages were beginning on several worlds. On Altair Prime, High Counselor Vex Thara faced growing criticism from her own parliament. The failed invasion of New Dakota had embarrassed the entire Altarian Empire. High Counselor, a parliamentary representative, declared, "Your policies have led to military defeat and economic disaster. We demand your resignation." Vexthara struggled to maintain control. The humans got lucky. One battle does not determine the war. But she knew the truth. The war was already lost. Humanity had proven they could defend themselves. More importantly, they had proven the galaxy needed them more than they needed the galaxy. The Galactic Council was dying. Species were leaving daily. Trade was collapsing. The carefully maintained peace was dissolving into chaos. And somewhere in human space, President Helen Brooks was receiving requests for meetings from 23 different species. They all wanted the same thing: a new relationship with humanity. Based on respect and equality, the old order was ending. A new one was about to begin. 6 months had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Council. The galaxy looked completely different now. Where once there had been order, chaos ruled. Where once there had been unity, division spread like a disease. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime was almost empty. Only 15 species still attended regular sessions. Most chairs sat vacant, covered in dust. No meaningful legislation had passed since Resolution 2847. The great experiment in galactic government was dying. High Counselor Vextara sat alone in her office, staring at reports of economic collapse across Altarian space. 3 of her colonies were in open revolt. The military defeat at New Dakota had destroyed her reputation. Tomorrow, her own parliament would vote on her removal from office. A knock came at her door. Admiral Corex entered, his uniform wrinkled and his face tired. "High Counselor, I have the final reports from our occupied territories." "How bad is it?" she asked. "We control nothing," Corex admitted. "The humans have defeated our forces on 5 different worlds. Our ships are breaking down without human-made parts. Half our fleet is grounded for maintenance we cannot perform." Vexthara closed her eyes. "How did we miscalculate so badly?" "We thought they were just farmers and miners," Corex replied. "We forgot they were also engineers and soldiers." Meanwhile, humanity was thriving. On Earth, President Helen Brooks stood before the United Nations General Assembly. Behind her, a holographic display showed the locations of human colonies and their new trading partners. "6 months ago, we were told we needed supervision to succeed," she said. "Today, we have established trade relationships with 28 species. We have built 5 new starships and founded 3 new colonies. We have proven that freedom and self-determination are the foundations of progress." The assembly erupted in applause. Earth's economy was booming. Human companies, freed from council regulations, were expanding rapidly across known space. In the Lunicity spaceport, Dr. Kethmer stepped off a transport ship. He was the first alien ambassador to the Independent Human Alliance. His embassy would be established in the new diplomatic quarter being built on the moon. Ambassador Jake Morrison met him at the airlock. The two had become friends through months of secret communications. "Dr. Kethmer, welcome to human space," Jake said warmly. "Ambassador Morrison, thank you for this opportunity. Rigel formally recognizes the Independent Human Alliance as a sovereign government." They walked through the spaceport together. Kethmer was amazed by what he saw. Human and alien workers labored side by side on construction projects. Rigelian medical equipment was being installed in the new hospital wing. Vegan agricultural experts were consulting with human farmers. How many species have requested embassy? Space? Kethmer asked. 17 so far, Jake replied. More requests arrive every day. On New Dakota, Governor Pete Collins was being sworn in as the first president of the Colonial Federation. The ceremony took place in the same capital city where Altarian forces had been defeated months earlier. Battle scars still marked some buildings, but the city was alive with celebration. Kate Bishop, now promoted to Colonial Defense Secretary, stood beside Collins as he took the oath of office. The planet had become a symbol of human resistance and ingenuity. My fellow colonists, Collins said in his inaugural address, we have proven that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they fight for what they believe in. New Dakota will always stand as proof that freedom cannot be conquered. The crowd cheered. Representatives from other human colonies applauded. Even some alien observers, now allied with humanity, joined in the celebration. Deep in space, Admiral. Chris Stone stood on the bridge of the new starship UHS Independence. It was humanity's first deep space exploration vessel, built outside Council territory. The ship was heading beyond the galactic rim, searching for new worlds and new civilizations. Admiral, his navigation officer reported, we're receiving a signal from an unknown source. It appears to be a greeting in multiple languages. Stone smiled. Looks like we're about to make some new friends. Signal our peaceful intentions and request permission to approach. The signal came from the Andorian Syndicate, a powerful civilization that had remained neutral during the Council crisis. They had been watching humanity's struggle with great interest. Back on Earth, CEO Tony Marshall was overseeing the launch of humanity's first privately owned shipyard. The Marshall Industrial Group had grown rapidly since humanity's independence. Their ships were now in demand across the galaxy. Mr. Marshall, his production manager, said, we have orders for 67 ships from 18 different species. Most of them are former council members. Marshall nodded with satisfaction. Give priority to our allies. The others can wait. Human corporations were becoming major players in galactic commerce. Without council regulations limiting their growth, they were outcompeting many established companies. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had become the director of the Independent Research Institute on Mars. Scientists from across the galaxy were requesting access to human knowledge and technology. Her terraforming research was particularly valuable. Dr. Rodriguez, her assistant informed her, the Tau Ceti Republic is offering to fund our next terraforming project. They want to establish a joint research colony. Elena smiled. Schedule a meeting. It's time to show the galaxy what real scientific cooperation looks like. The breakthrough technologies developed during humanity's isolation were reshaping entire industries. Energy production, space travel, and planetary engineering were all advancing rapidly under human innovation. On Nexus Prime, Chancellor Morvik made a desperate final attempt to save the Council. He called an emergency session, but only 12 species attended. The chamber that had once buzzed with the voices of 47 civilizations was nearly silent. Fellow delegates, he said to the sparse audience, we must find a way to bring humanity back into the galactic community. Without them, our institutions are failing. The vegan representatives stood up. Chancellor, perhaps it is time to admit we made a mistake. The humans offered partnership, and we demanded submission. Now they have proven they do not need us. One by one, the remaining delegates began to speak. The consensus was clear. The Council had failed. Resolution 2847 had been a disaster that destroyed everything they had built. I propose we formally dissolve the Galactic Council, the Tau Ceti representative announced. Each species should be free to pursue their own relationships with humanity. The vote was unanimous. After 300 years, the Galactic Council voted itself out of existence. News of the Council's dissolution spread quickly. On worlds across the galaxy, governments began reaching out to human representatives. They wanted to establish bilateral relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Harmony Base, humanity's new diplomatic station. It floated at the edge of human space, serving as a neutral meeting ground for species seeking new relationships with humanity. Through the great viewing windows, he could see ships from dozens of different civilizations approaching the station. Former enemies and old friends alike were coming to negotiate new partnerships. His communication device chimed with an incoming message from President Brooks on Earth. Jake activated the holographic display, and the president's image appeared before him. "Ambassador Morrison," she said, "I've been watching the arrivals at Harmony Base. How many meeting requests do you have?" 34 so far, Madam President. 3 more arrived this morning." President Brooks smiled. "It seems walking away from that council chamber was the best decision we ever made." Jake nodded, looking out at the star-filled void beyond the station. "Madam President, I believe we're ready to begin again, this time as equals." The communication ended. Jake remained at the window, watching as more ships approached. Each one represented a species that had learned to respect humanity through adversity, rather than accept them through pity dot in the distance. The abandoned hulk of Nexus Prime drifted silently through space. Its empty corridors and dusty chambers served as a monument to the failure of forced unity. The age of the Galactic Council was over. A new age was beginning. An age where respect was earned, not demanded. Where partnership was chosen, not imposed. Where humanity, once considered primitive and in need of guidance, had become the catalyst for a better galaxy. The universe was vast and full of possibilities. And for the first time in galactic history, every species was free to explore those possibilities as equals. Humanity had not just won their independence. They had given independence to everyone.